I have two questions. I guess you can roll the answers in together. One kind of piggybacks on the first question there.
Okay.
Slots in Prince George's County.
Yes.
That it has its evils that go along with it, as well as the alleged good of creating more alleged wealth. Second question, resources. Are you saying that you're going to create these things and you're going to get more resources, or you're going to rearrange the decks, the chairs on the deck that you have?
Excellent question, both. Two different questions. Let me start with the slots question. As a community prosecutor, which might be a surprise to a lot of people, we actually had slot machines here in Prince George's County operating throughout the county late at night illegally. I shut down 4 places I know of. So that's number one. Number two, there are social ills associated with slots. Number three, I'm not necessarily convinced of the revenue that will come with slots, because the slots operators will receive a significant amount of the monies. I would need
bills rewritten to reallocate
unless certain things happen. I'm not necessarily saying that the slots will bring in X amount of millions. I'm not there yet. I like to see when the ink dries, what does it actually say? So you mentioned, how in the world can I increase domestic violence? How can I increase, create the elder abuse unit? How can I do certain things with what we have? I'll describe it to you this way. We have I'll take a look at violent crime, homicides. Everyone hears homicide numbers sometimes. Does everyone here realize that we're kind of close to DC in terms of the homicide numbers each year? Homicides are now down all over the region. Baltimore, same way. We're pretty close to Baltimore as well. DC, they have 400 prosecutors handling crime in DC. Baltimore City, and they have similar numbers to us, they have 225 prosecutors. Prince George's County, we have 70. 70. We are triaging cases in Prince George's County. If you are ever a victim and you want to come in and let me have a consultation with my state's attorney and I don't need this and that, it's really difficult to receive that type of service like you may receive in Anne Arundel, Calvert, Charles, St. Mary, Kent, Queen Anne, Frederick, because all of our prosecutors are in court all day, every day. When prosecutors visit us from all around the state, they say, well, when are your non-court days? And we say, what are you talking about? There are no such thing as non-court days. And when do you meet with these people? When do you interview your police and make sure everything's together? When do you interview your victims? And we do not have the time to do that.
Are the numbers controlled by the state?
The numbers, there was always a cap for Prince George's County alone, in terms of the number of prosecutors. That cap was recently lifted after many years of wrangling last year. But now that means who's going to pay for the additional prosecutors? You can go to the county council. There's a thought of we can put forth the request and they must pay. But then if they don't pay, what do you do? So there is a political game of football being played with all of our safety. Now, what will I do then? The state's attorney, Jack Johnson, Glenn Ivey, in many cases, they do not try cases on their own. I will try cases as the state's attorney, like they do in Montgomery, Queen Anne, Kent, Frederick, and everywhere else. Number two, state's attorney generally has some type of administrative staff of around 10 positions. I would not take 10 positions of administrative staff. I think that staff is really to help you make sure you succeed in your next election. Those 10 positions need to be converted into attorney positions. And that's my thought. How to increase the office, pretty much 6% walking in. Take those positions and make them attorney positions, because all hands must be on deck in these times, especially as a prosecutor. That's my real position. And still, number two, have the county council allow us to hire more prosecutors until that time is done.
And you tell us anything about supervisory experience, managerial experience? You said something about being an assistant chief,
yes,
or something. How do prosecutorial skills translate into managerial skills?
Good question. I have been a hard worker all my life, and that's one of the reasons why I tell you about rising from a government GS1 up through GS9 when I left to go to law school, working government agencies and things of that sort. Number two, I am now in charge of district court. It's hard supervising people, but try supervising attorneys. They are a different type of people, and but we do it, and we do it well. I supervise a staff of 15 attorneys and roughly 8 support staff. And I make sure that we're doing the best job, most professional job we can. Coming in, I believe in a couple things. One, I give you the goals. Everyone, teamwork, works together to achieve the goals. If you cannot do that, then we'll have to do some changes. We do not have time to sit here and allow people to flounder within offices. So I've been called, my management style, straightforward. I believe in evaluations, and if you're not meeting evaluations, we have to do something different. But it's a good question. It's a question you should probably ask all of the opponents, all of my opponents. I believe I am the only one actually with management experience running for the state's attorney's position. And number 2, I'm the only prosecutor that's running for state's attorney. I don't know what you do or you do or you do. One delegate, that's one of the things the newspaper article says, one delegate says, you know, I know your opponents, and as much as I love how Dernoga ran the county council for green business and being green, he shouldn't run the state's attorney's office. As much as Angela also Brooks, she was appointed to the Revenue Authority, that's in charge of the parking meters and things. As great of a job as she may have done handling the parking authority, she shouldn't run the state's attorney's office. So when you talk about management, the first thing we look at for all companies are the managers qualified to do what they do. Once you deem that they at least are qualified, then you go into the management style question. He had another question.
If I could just follow up with one thing, and I have to pick among several.
That's fine.
Youth, Cheltenham, problems with violence in the schools and whatnot. What role can the state's attorney's office play in this? How do you see our county developing with respect to how we handle miscreant youth?
I do believe the term youth, when you have a 16-year-old armed carjacker, I don't really consider him a youth.
Can't agree with you.
When you have a 16-year-old armed carjacker, I don't consider him a youth. I always filed what we call treat him as adult. I was probably the #1 proponent of treating some juveniles as adults. When you do a crime that is so severe, I do believe you should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's number 1. Number 2, let's take auto theft. That's pretty much the #1 crime in Prince George's County. That is essentially what we call the beginning crime. You teach a 14-year-old how to steal a car, hey, go take that car and everything else. They come to court, slap on the wrist, then what lesson do you learn? I do believe in a severe punishment or an appropriate punishment the first time around and the second time around. Cheltenham, one of the things I will say about Cheltenham, and it's not really part of your question, I will say that Baltimore City kids are different than everyone else. Baltimore City kids in a juvenile facility are fairly violent. They believe in sexually assaulting the Prince George's kids and the Montgomery County kids, and that's their goals. I do believe that we probably need to start separating and keeping Baltimore City juveniles. Maybe we need to keep them in Baltimore City. Prince George's County juveniles, let's keep them in Prince George's County. And keep them in a regional-based juvenile system versus sending Baltimore City kids to Cheltenham and Prince George's kids to Cheltenham, Montgomery County, and Anne Arundel County. Bring them there. That's my thoughts as to that. But we need to prosecute the juveniles. And we need to prosecute them the first time. I do believe in the goals of the juvenile system are rehabilitation and punishment. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with increasing the educational component within the DJS system. I'm fine with, but I'm also fine with increasing the work output of the juvenile. As a juvenile, when you go to a juvenile facility, you are required to, in many cases, wash your sheets, clean the place, help cut the grass, help the facility run. I am for that 100%. It's almost a throwback to, remember when prisons used to make license plates and break, right. I'm a proponent of that. I'm a little different. I am a prosecutor for 12 years. That makes me a little more conservative than most.